Hello and welcome to another Tech Articles. In today's article, I'm going to do a bit of an update about how I'm handling static site generations using Simply Static. I've been running a new scheme for about 4 months now, and it's doing really well. It's one of several projects I've been running behind the scenes actually since before Christmas, to try and hone the ability and how I run them. And I think I've nailed this one now. I'm pretty happy with how this works. As I say, it's been in place 4 months. It's worked seamlessly, and I'm just going to give you an overview of how that works. And I've made one set of changes very recently that changes how I handle email delivery for static forms. And as well as that, I've also introduced a couple of SaaS products for forms as well, for more simple forms, to allow no integration needed. One being def form, for example, which I will probably do future videos on. So I use Simply Static to generate those sites, and that's nothing spectacular. I mean, lots of people use Simply Static. It generates a lot of static-based WordPress sites. There's many reasons why you'll turn a site static. In this particular case, the one we're going to use here, it's purely based on its size. It's an old legacy site. I say old legacy site. I have actually updated the website that's attached to it in the last sort of 12 months. But the content was generated years ago, and it was generated using a tool called WP Zinc. Um, and that's basically a page generator. So it has thousands of pages, and this is from the days of SEO dominance was part of duplicate content. It's not so much, doesn't work now, but these are well indexed, well used pages, so deleting them is pointless. It still generates more income as a site than it costs to produce and keep. So it's pointless rewriting any of the content or doing any of that. I keep it to do exactly that. It generates the leads it needs to, with no issue whatsoever. So I keep it. But in this case, there's about 4,500 pages. I think 47 on this site, plus thousands of other files, images, PDFs. The usual stuff you find on sites. So it's a very large site. It's CPU heavy when it comes to WordPress, because of all the security plugins and all of the bits and pieces that you have to install on your stack anyway. And no matter how good my caching is, with 4,500 pages, it's always caching a new page unless I pre-cached it over several days. It's always going to be caching new sites. It doesn't get enough visitors to not be able to comfortably sit on a 2-core, say 4 gig VPS by itself. It'll comfortably sit there, which is where it sits or where it used to sit as a site, and it worked fine. And using a low end server, that I could get that for probably $50-$60 a year. But I've since turned it static, or I've been turning it static, and several other of these legacy sites that no longer get updated. The content is old. I only need to update them when a trade body logo changes, or legislation changes, or a something that is beyond my control changes. So that's the basis of that. But the big change for me and how I've been doing this is how I've been hosting these sites. I was hosting them on their own VPS, and on a dedicated domain, or on, in some cases, a CMS subdomain. And that was working fine, but obviously it's overhead for a site that I basically generate once a year in some cases. Sometimes not even that. Sometimes one of the sites I checked the other day, the last time I regenerated it was 2022. So it's, and that wasn't even using Simply Static. That was using its precursor, which I forget its name of now, which will probably come to me. But yeah, it wasn't using Simply Static. It was using another version written by the same person that originally wrote Simply Static before Patrick took it over. So I've got a couple of old Windows machines lying around. I live in the UK. I don't have the luxury of great broadband internet. I don't live in a cable area yet. I don't have cable internet, so I'm stuck with what we call, or what's called DSL, ADSL. and that means I get about 40 meg down, and I get a poxy 1 megabyte up, which is rubbish. So I can't host websites in my house, but I can on my local network, and I can push up content fast enough to make it worth doing. So I decided 4 months ago to turn around one of these units and use it for a local development system. It's very similar to local by Flywheel, and except it's a physical server. At first I tried letting grid pane through my firewall and using my grid pane server to administer it, and that didn't work very well. It got the job done, but it just wasn't very efficient for me. I didn't need all the bells and whistles of grid pane. What I needed was an easy way to manage sites. So first of all, I'll go through the details of the server in this case. I use server lightly here because it's a business machine, not a server. It is a very simple little HP EliteDesk Mini G6, and these are the specs. It used to be an old desktop computer that I would use. In fact, I use an upgraded version of this, the latest G9, now as my daily driver with 64 gig of RAM and an i7, and it's where I record 90% of my videos. In this case, I do what I'm using is upgraded, so it has 40 gig of RAM and it has 2 terabytes of storage. So it has 1 terabyte of SSD and 1 terabyte of M2. So, but everything else is the same. So in the UK, that's going to cost about £200 per year to run, I would say, at full 65 watts for its duration. Now, it doesn't run at that. I mean, it probably runs at 65 watts for 6 hours a year. It's barely used. I spin up occasional sites on it. I tend to do most of my dev on live now on a live site. I've got a work in progress for that, so it's only really used for these static generations or stuff that I want to keep there. So that's what I'm running, and a similar sort of VPS would cost a significant amount of money. So if we go to Vultr and we look, and in my case it would be a 12 core, but we'll go with an 8 core here, and it's got 40 gig of RAM. The transfer doesn't matter, bandwidth doesn't matter, because it's on my domestic ADSL and it's unlimited, and it's got more storage, but that's $160 a month to have a VPS to hold all of this stuff. If I wanted them there, now it's overkill. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that is what is needed for this static generation. I mean, I could spin this up for 21 cents, 22 cents an hour. I probably need it 6 hours a year for each site. I mean, it's cheaper to spin up one of these when I need it than it is to run this if I was leaving this on 24/7 running at capacity, which I'm not. So it's on, but it's just not doing anything. It just sits there idling. But it's not quite as convenient to have them just there. I can make the changes, I can push them, I can go to bed, they're there. Doesn't matter if I don't come back to it for 3 days, I'm not being charged for it. But there are ways you can do this, and there is I've got all the tools that would allow me to do that. For example, I could store them on one of my FTP servers. I could use WP migration URL plugin to pull them from that FTP server down to a new WordPress site that I'd spun up. It would take me maybe, I don't know, 20 seconds to generate the site using one of my generators, and maybe 5 minutes to pull the backup down and install it, being based on them both being in decent data centers with decent size lines. So it's not that inconvenient, but to me, it's worth it. It's an experiment that I'm actually really impressed with. So how am I doing it? Well, I'm using a control panel called Cloudpanel on that local server. It works really well, and the reason I like this and the reason I went with this is because it's actually installed on the computer. There's no cloud element to it, although it's called Cloudpanel. There's no cloud element to it. It's stored in my house on this hardware, and allows me to control that hardware. So all I've done is installed the latest Ubuntu 24.4 LTS, and I've installed the script via PuTTY to run and install Cloudpanel, and that's it. That's what I've done, and it's on there, and it's good, and it's running, and it's been running a while. It was a little tricky to get the backups set up, but I now know how to do that, and it was about naming conventions more than anything. To read documentation really, rather than to go, well, I've used rclone before, this is easy. That would make a difference. So this is what I'm using, and this is actually the local server. This is a local IP address, this is the local server, and I'm just going to log into it. Now, all being well, you'll see that I have one site currently installed on here, and this is one local domain name. It requires a little bit of work for me and my main computer in this, so I use Windows. I know people hate Windows, but I use Windows. I always have. I've got it nailed. It works for me. And so I edit my host file, and I've pointed that domain using my host file to this IP address, so 192.168.135. I've pointed my computer to this server for that IP address, and I've also edited the host file on the server to point itself back to that. And the reason I've had to do that is because I haven't opened up a firewall port. This is not contactable outside of my home network. That's why I like it. It's secure. My firewall stops access to any of the ports on this. So it can communicate out, but it can't communicate in, which means it's using self-signed SSLs, which is why you've got the not secure warning here, because Let's Encrypt can't get back in. So nothing gets back in. It's all local, and that's one of the reasons why I like it. It's local. I don't have to worry so much about security. I can leave it running. I don't have to worry about somebody getting in. It also means I don't have to update the plugins quite as often, because I only need them for functionality, not for security. So this is Cloudpanel, and I'm not going to go into too much of an overview of Cloudpanel. I can do that on another video if somebody wants that. But this is the dashboard, so this tells you what it is, and it tells you the operating system, the host name, the size. So as I said, it's 12 cores, 39 gigabytes. It's 40 actually, but it's just how it works. You can see it basically using nothing, and in fact, I can't show you because they're there from later, but I might even have, let me just pause this video. I might even have some videos from because I regenerated this site last night intentionally for this video, and I might have some videos, some screenshots of the load. So it's correct, I did actually record some screenshots. So here's one of them from last night. So this is before I went to bed. And what this is doing is it shows you what it was doing at the time, and this was generating that large site that I've put on there and shown you. And for privacy reasons, I've obviously modified all the headers and stuff and removed all the other sites, which I'll put back after this video. So you can see it's 12 CPUs. I was using about 44%. Again, memory was barely off the ground. So this shows you that because you don't have the visitors, you don't need the level of CPU RAM that this has. It's 16 gig is probably more than enough to do anything that I do on these. I've barely seen this come off this line. Don't even think it's come off this line now. This is still along this line now. It's a pretty constant 6%. So yeah, I don't think you need to worry too much. So this is probably around the 16 gig range. So if you put it a little bit higher, you'd never get you just never get anywhere near it. But this is the load. So the load here, you can see this is what it is now in idling. We're not even using half a core in idling, and that's me navigating, making sure backups are run and all that sort of stuff for this video. But last night we were climbing from 2, and I started running this a few minutes before. We started running from 2 core all the way up here to about 5 core. So we were using a fair amount of CPU, and this is one of the reasons I liked this. This is totally in my control. It's mine. I'm not causing anybody any issues, no matter how fast it generates, no matter what it does. So yeah, that's the load from last night when I was doing a generation. So now this is the generation as it was, and then it finished last night. So there was 8,607 files to find. I started it at 11 minutes past 10, and it finished itself, all uploaded to Bunny. And I'm going to exclude this because you can see that what is 700 meg took almost 25 minutes to upload to Bunny CDN, which is where I host these static sites. So it actually finished at 2:36. So really, it's about 4 hours, 4 hours 20 minutes ish to generate that site, which is pretty good in my opinion for quite a large site. It's got a lot of files, a lot of static files to generate, a lot of files to run through. Even indexing those files takes a long time. So that's all works. It generates exactly as it should. It uploads exactly as it should, and it works flawlessly. And as I say, it's all local. It's all on this machine. I don't have to worry about intrusion. I don't have to worry about being a good neighbour, because no matter how much you claw back and you're restricted in your CPU usage, steal does occur, particularly in lower end VPSs, and I don't want to be causing people issues because I'm running these occasional generations. I like to be a good neighbour, and that's really the how this generation of these static sites is now happening. And I can go into a lot more detail on the specifics of this if that's what people want. And this one of my jobs for this afternoon is I'm going to generate some new virtual machines. One Ubuntu server, one Windows 11, so that I can do more of this sort of stuff for you if you need it, if you want it. But I just wanted to talk to you about this and how it works. Now, the other side of this that I've changed, and I did a video a while ago about how I used Phlegmatic to create a gateway for email delivery to replace FormSpree. And although it worked, and it worked really well, and it was fast and efficient, it seemed a little bit counterintuitive to me to use WordPress to do what is really a simple static PHP issue. So I've been working on that on and off for the last few weeks, really. I have had a working model. I didn't like how it worked. It wasn't done. But I have now got a purely PHP version that uses the Email It API or SMTP using PHP Mailer to do that. And that's the last two items I have here. So here is another Simply Static site. And this is just a simple WordPress bog standard WP InstaWP site, and over here is the resulting Bunny CDN site. And what we do now is, if I go to a new form as an example, you see we have a contact form here, and this is one of the contact forms, and I think I have another one here that's got all sorts of fields in it for testing purposes, and they are generated from this site as all are. They're based on Fluent Forms, and I set them up in Simply Static Pro as forms, and they're both here. And this is the one with all the fields. This is the other. And the way this works is, the reason I've done this is because security is key, and when it comes to processing forms, I want to be able to just determine where they're going for email deliverability purposes, but equally I only want forms that I want sent. So when Email It was released, I emailed Patrick and asked about whether there would be authorization added, custom headers added to the plugin, and he said yes, he would add them, and he has. And originally, my idea was just to use their API and code something in to do that, but it just won't work the way I wanted to. But I've been able to use them how I was going to use them anyway, with a third-party man-in-the-middle type script. So what this does is it sends a message to a webhook, and this is hiding one of my lab addresses that I've got this in a subfolder called send. And what it does is it sends to that PHP file. That's all it does. The webhook is actually just a PHP file on some cheap budget hosting, less than $15 a year. Because I wanted to test. I've been testing this on all sorts of hosting environments to see how it works and how it functions, and it seems to handle many forms. I mean, I haven't been able to benchmark it to destruction yet, so it's more than enough for what I need. So it sends a bearer token in the header, and the bearer token is important because the script actually looks for that bearer token. And what I'm going to do now is all being well, hopefully what I'm going to do now is head over to this form, submit it, and get the email. Now, this is directly generated over on this site, but what I'm going to do, because it's so quick, I'm going to generate it now. You see, I generated it before I started recording this video, and it took about 16 seconds. So I'm just going to generate this site again, and this should push this really simple 3-page site, 2 forms, in a few seconds to Bunny CDN. And then I'll reload the page, and you can see that this is all live, and that's it. 13 seconds and it's done. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to read. I'm not going to send this one because this one's got loads of forms. I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to refresh the page with a hard refresh, and I'm just going to put in some details in here, and I'm not actually going to fill in anything else. .dev, except for actually I'm going to leave the subject empty for now, and I'll just add a URL here of Google, and we're going to submit our form, and it tells me that my message has been sent. And now I'm going to head over to my emails here, and with a bit of luck, because I haven't tested this, we will get a new web form submission. And what has happened is it's grabbed the details, it's told me who's sending what, where it's coming from, how it's coming. So we've got our form fields here, including a hidden field that you can't see on that form, but it's in there as a hidden field. And obviously I've needed to test this because I didn't want to customize this for every form. The whole idea was that it took out the irrelevant items, or as many of the irrelevant items as it can. I've noticed I've missed one here. This needs to be done here in metadata, but I can work on that. And as I say, this is still very much testing, and it's been tested on a few of my sites. It's been running for a few weeks now, and I think I've cracked it. It works exactly as intended. I've got every email test that I've sent within a few seconds of testing it, and as I say, it's on some really cheap budget hosting as well. And once I've got this finalized, I will probably push this to a repo to share, and then you just need one PHP site to upload it to. As I say, cheap budget hosting is fine. You'll need your own SMTP server details. In this case, I think that went through the Email It API. I think that's what I was testing before. So you could use Email It and use the API as well, and it just delivers the form. Now, if we go back to our generation here, and I'm going to change the form and change the bearer token. So if I open, I think it's this one here. And if I just change this bearer token, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these, and I'm hopefully not going to lose those because otherwise I won't know how many there is. And I'm going to just send a bearer token of P now, which is not the correct bearer token. We're going to regenerate that site, which is why it's such a rubbish site, so that it's quick and easy and it's done in seconds. And it should be done 11 seconds that time. And I'm going to reload this page, and then I'm going to force a refresh. And I'm now going to do again. So you see here it says new form submission, and that's because we didn't enter a subject. If we enter a subject into this form, we should get a different. What email address did I send that to? Hello. Okay. Hello at wp.dev. I'm going to put a subject of here of web form test. And I'm just going to put my name in here, just so it's different. And I'm going to submit that form. My message has been sent, and I'm not going to wait too long, but that's interesting. That can't have reloaded. How do I find out if it did reload? I don't think that actually refreshed the first time. So although it sent, it didn't. I've just checked I will just check the logs in a second. I'm going to send one more. I'm hoping that I've now refreshed it enough to. Um, email address doesn't matter. I don't know why I keep putting it in. I want to make sure it's one of mine. XXX in subject and URL or a new area of XXX. Let's see if we get that. And I'm just going to go and open the server logs. And see what we come up with. So what time is it? 9:53, 9:55. Yeah, there we go. So actually, the first time it sent with the original bearer token still. So it passed authentication, whereas now the last two attempts have failed because the bearer token is now reporting as P rather than the original, however many P's it was. So now it's working as it should. So this is the reason that I've gone this way, is because how this script works is it matches bearer tokens to emails. No bearer token, no email. And that allows me to use the same bearer token and email pair on an unlimited number of sites. They will always get delivered to the same email address. But equally, it means you can't just find the address that this is sent to and spam the world with it. Without the bearer token, the email will not be processed. It will not send. Although it will still be received, it will be authenticated. But if it doesn't pass authentication, it won't send. And that's the big change here. Now, I could have done this with Flymatic. Flymatic is capable of authentication of webhooks, and I could have done exactly that with that. But it seems pointless for something as simple as email delivery to have the overhead of WordPress. So that's why I've been developing a PHP native solution akin to the old form mailer PHP files that we all used to use for our HTML forms back 100 years ago. So it's sort of like full circle in that respect. This is almost exactly the same thing. It's just considerably more sophisticated using an API and other bits and pieces. But it's basically the same thing. It's got hard coded in a conf file, hard coded data that it retrieves. And the good thing about that conf file is I can store it below the web accessible part of a website. So like my plugin updates servers, which I'm currently writing an article on for Tech Articles, for how I'm doing some of the free updates for really useful plugins, and how I built a new server for that, and how I'm serving those updates, including authentication in that case as well. So you can't use one of my plugins to download all of my plugins. That you need the authentication key for each and every one of them to download them from my update server, so to stop spam and people going on a fishing expedition, because I do use it to update some of my own internal plugins as well. And yeah, that was really what I wanted to go over. I wanted to show some of the stuff that I'm doing behind the scenes, some of the other bits and pieces I'm doing with static sites, and see if there's any interest in this sort of thing. If anyone wants to see any of this in greater detail, I don't know. Maybe you want to see me produce a Cloudpanel site. Maybe you want to see me turn a site into static with a form using this script, maybe you want to see any of the bits and pieces we discussed today in general to see how they work for your own usage. But I hope that's been useful. And thank you for watching. Please do like the video, do subscribe to the channel, and do leave your comments in the comments section. I do read them. I do reply to them all eventually. And yeah, thanks for watching.